Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition. Questions and answers.
And you are?
I'm Marina Hyde.
There's so much information in that link, isn't there?
Yeah, we will be offering media training for people who just want to maybe emulate this polish.
I'm Richard Osman, by the way. Welcome to the Question and Answers edition.
Hello, everybody. Right, come on, hit me with a question because it's too embarrassing.
Simon Thomas has a question which is perfect for you. Simon says, I believe that sub-editors are the ones creating titles for newspaper articles in an era where a title is often the only thing shared and stirring up reactions on social media. Is that still fair? And why don't journalists get to write their article titles?
Thank you very much for that question, Simon. I'm going to slip into some real professional argot here and say that we call them headlines. So they're not the article title, they are a headline. Sorry if I'm losing people already, but anyway.
So that would be the title of the article you would call in the newsroom.
Call it, yeah. I mean, again,
headline.
It is arcane, so stay with me. Subs are brilliant, and I know sometimes people will sort of complain about the subs, but subs in my experience are absolutely brilliant. I'm very grateful to all the subs who work on my columns. They do come up with the headlines because the reason is they are better at it. There was a guy who used to write at The Guardian who doesn't write columns there any longer, but he did write columns. And he would always take an issue with his headline. And I know this is going to sound wrong, but he did slightly feel like the headline should be just my point in the article. Right. And, often the headline's your point in the article, nobody's going to want to read it. So they would put these things in that could have hopefully be sort of reader nip to some extent. And in the end, he would write his own headlines. And I'm afraid the numbers went significantly down. What you're always trying to do with a headline is get people to read the article. I know that sounds very obvious. Nowadays, there's all sorts of things like SEO, search engine optimization, which is a way of, how those things are picked up.
And that's, by the way, with search engine optimization, it's often, if you're writing a question, we were talking about The Rock on Tuesday's episode, if you had an article that mentioned him even vaguely, you might put his name in the title because his name is searched for so often, it goes up in the search engine optimization stakes. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And we do actually, one of the things I've talked about, the fact that The Guardian give you all your data, The Guardian where I write my columns, it's absolutely, they also have a brilliant thing every day, which is like an audience email. Different people write it every day, but they write it in this great sort of conversational tone, but it contains so much fascinating information. I read it top to bottom every day, saying these are the biggest. Yeah, you'd love it. I mean, obviously, I think I'm not allowed to share it at all with anyone, but this is, and it says what the biggest hits on the website that day were, and going really right down what the most deeply read things were. And then someone might do a little breakout thing saying, we're having real success at the moment with these incredibly powerful first person quotes from articles, and they will analyse why a sort of first person quote in an article made that piece do really, really well that day. And they'll say, this happened to mention this, a time, and then something really weird at the end that you're thinking, hang on, what's that? I must read it. I really value that as a sort of piece of audience.
What's your takeaway in terms of, because we have to come up with titles for these episodes as well. And again, that works on the same thing, search engine optimization. What are the best words to use?
At the moment, you'll find a lot of first person quotes from the article, and it will start with something that will be quite a dramatic statement, and then I never saw them again, and you'll be thinking, hang on, wait, you did, I don't know, XYZ, which sounds quite interesting in the first place. Those two, that thing, that's sort of, a story in 16 words, but ideally you'll want the person to have said it, or it ought to be a line in the thing, and they can be so arresting, those.
And you want it to raise a question as well.
Yes, and what you're really asking people to do, by the way, when you're reading those, they're often for long reads. Yeah. So you're kind of asking people to spend 5 or 6 minutes of their day, maybe 7 minutes. It's a long time, and so you need to think, where is that quote? By the way, if it's in the third paragraph, that's not very helpful. Yeah. You kind of need to keep them involved all the way through, and it's amazing how long and how engaged people stay till the end of often these articles. I find it so interesting, and I don't know if other newspapers do it, but I love the fact that we get sent all this data and you can just look at it, and it's just really interesting. I feel like I'm a complete amateur in it, so it's a privilege to kind of see how other people are trying to make your stuff get read.
I would love it, by the way, if someone from the 1950s did some time travel and came here and heard you just say, it's 6 or 7 minutes, a really long time. They'd be like, sorry, what's happened to culture?
Yeah. I know. The other thing I will say is that what you've asked, Simon, is you've said the headline is often the only thing shared and stirring up reactions on social media. Yes, and I do notice people who don't take pastoral care of their writers. There's a lot of people who will get their first ever piece in a national newspaper, and it will be one of those things I've just been talking about, a first-person confessional. And it will often be like probably their worst story or a terrible thing that's happened to them, or like some really ridiculous position or point of view they've adopted. Or maybe they haven't. Maybe the article is more nuanced. But if you get something slapped on the top of that makes you look an absolute idiot in the headline, I would say it's never your job. And I always try and say to younger writers or to people when I'm, going and talking to, trainee journalists or whatever, even though you feel like it's not my job to write the headline, if you see, could you let me know what you're going to headline it with? Because it is your name above the door and you're the one who's going to get dragged on social media if it just makes you look like a fool in order to hook people into the piece.
Well, yeah, the Times keep advertising on my Twitter feed and they'll have articles, usually, as you say, by young female journalists saying, why I stalked my ex or something. You read the article and of course it's about this awful, terrible ex and how they teamed up with 3 other people to track him down and warn other people. So like this amazing article. But the headline would be, why I stalked my ex, and a picture of that person and hundreds and hundreds of comments. This awful, misogynist
just off the
comments.
Headline.
Yeah, because they're not reading it.
No.
And then also, which is my other bugbear, people saying, it's behind a paywall. You think, that's their business model.
Journalism costs money and there are different views on how to get people to pay for it.
You don't go into a newsagent and say, I cannot believe that Mars bar is behind a paywall. This is absolutely... But absolute 100% you see people hung out to dry all the time.
And that is the example of a sub not doing the right thing and just failing entirely in a duty of pastoral care, because I really think that people who end up getting dragged in that way, it's impossible to explain what it's like if you are at the centre of one of those kind of mad Twitter storms for a day. It's properly traumatic.
Especially, as you said, listen, the first thing you'll often write for a big national newspaper is your biggest story. It's the biggest thing that happened to you. You think this is the thing that I can...
But don't do that. Don't do that. It may take longer to get in, but don't do your confessional stuff first, because honestly, wait till you're a really good writer and do it then.
Thank you so much, Simon. And also there's some legendary, brilliant headlines as well, some amazing creative ones. There's the football one when Inverness Caledonian Thistle beat Celtic, which was super Cali go ballistic. Celtic are atrocious. I think Zander one day came back from a corporate. He often does, but I think he'd chosen the headline of the year, and that was as a car theft one. It was the hunt for red hot Skoda.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Which is a good one.
The New York Post headless body and topless bar. I love that one.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favourites is a sporting one, and it just shows you the absolute kind of titanic status of the guy and of his particular innings. It's a Donald Bradman one, and the headline was just the whole of the page, and it was, he's out. It was such an epic innings, and there was no question that you wouldn't even know who the he is about. Sometimes people can be first name in headline, and there are only certain people who get, and obviously someone like Boris could be a first name, and there are lots of different people who can be first names only in headline, but not that many of them. But this is just a pronoun in a headline. He's out. I love that, Bradman.
There was a good Formula One, I think there's a Benetton which caught fire in the pits. Everyone was absolutely fine. And it's just a picture of this conflagration with the ignited colours of Benetton. That's so good. Yeah, but it's great. I think wasn't there one when Frank Sinatra was having an ageing treatment? He was having sort of, sheep cells sort of kind of injected, and the headline was, I've got yous under my skin.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we could go on forever on
But
this
again,
one.
people are not clicking on punt. That's the point. It used to be, great, you do a punt, and now it has to be, mention The Rock or, ask a question that people have to. It's so annoying when you click on something. I hate it so much when it said the 4 reasons why you must. You think, oh, God, I know that this is not going to be the article I want, but I'm going to click on it anyway.
I can't help myself. Let me now ask you about World's Most Dangerous Roads, Richard.
Which is, again, that's a show that tells you everything in the title.
It's all right up there in the headline.
You're not kind of going, I wonder what that's about.
Graham Waggett says, how much danger are the celebrities actually in when they film World's Most Dangerous Roads? I understand it's for our entertainment, but surely the insurance wouldn't allow them to risk life and limb just for a laugh.
I often think that you often get asked to do celebrity shows that are kind of involve some sort of jeopardy, and you think, I'm just sort of trusting my life to, somebody, the sort of person who used to be an AP on something and now, is kind of head of security on something. I think World's Most Dangerous Roads. Funnily enough, I talked to 2 people who were on that. And if this is helpful, Graham, Lou Sanders, the comedian, said, it wasn't dangerous at all. They made it look dangerous, but it was actually amazing fun. And David Baddiel said, it was incredibly dangerous. He said, but mainly because I don't think they could believe what a terrible driver I was.
Wow.
it's it's one of those things where obviously they do everything they can on shows like that to make it as safe as possible, while sort of ramping
Whilst looking as dangerous as possible.
whilst looking as dangerous as possible. But there are support cars and things like that. There was a show, the BBC who did a show about sort of walking in the Arctic, and Gethin Jones and Kate Thornton were both on it. They were both on House of Games recently, and they said, "Oh, we thought we were going to die at one point in that." It was genuinely sort of, kind of go, "No, we only got an hour left of light. We need to get up to this ridge, in the kind of blinding
not
snowstorm."
Actually, one of the expeditions.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there are certain shows where you kind of go, you have to take it on trust that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Or if they sort of drop you naked in a forest, you're not going to be eaten by a bear. But anything could happen. And I'm such a klutz. Like I'm the David Baddiel of the piece. If you put me anywhere, I need extra health and safety wherever I am. When we used to do
your rider is just get me a load of health and safety, please.
Yeah. I genuinely think on big shows, there's always a health and safety expert. I remember we had a health and safety expert on Total Wipeout when we used to do that. And it genuinely, comically, the worst things that would happen to him. He would trip on everything. It was the perfect person to be a health and safety expert, because anything that could happen would happen. And so we'd had about a week out there in Argentina.
That's hilarious.
He had fallen off a curb. He'd been he'd been to the doctors once and the hospital once. He'd been to A&E once. And then we were having a laugh about this. We were all having dinner, and he came along, and we're saying, "Mate, I mean, it's hilarious. You're a health and safety expert, because everything goes wrong can happen to you." And I swear to God, this is true. He had the menu in front of him, and it caught light on a candle in the middle of the thing.
This is amazing.
So I would say that by and large, television productions take the absolute utmost care of this. If anyone's ever at any sort of risk, I was going to say particularly celebrities, but there's probably some truth in that.
Yeah.
So there,
don't break the celebrity.
Enormous sort of health and safety things, but stuff can go wrong, right? That's what I always think with I'm a Celebrity, when they're sort of underground in something. You think, well, what if something goes wrong on the set? I don't know. I couldn't do it.
Oh no.
No, but yes, but World's Most Dangerous Roads. I think they're certainly on dangerous roads. If you're a good driver, then dangerous roads are not dangerous, and if you're a bad driver, then every road is dangerous, isn't it? That's what I think.
Thank you. Safety first on this podcast, always.
Yes, exactly. Marina, a question from Natalie, who very much like Kylie, doesn't need a surname.
No.
I say Natalie, we all know who we mean. Thank you, Natalie. I cannot believe Natalie listens.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it.
That's so great.
Just put that in the SEO.
Natalie says, I have always wondered if people can copyright their voices. Surely it would always be cheaper to hire an impressionist rather than the likes of Stephen Fry. What stops this happening? Or does it happen all the time and I've been duped?
Natalie, you have not been duped. It doesn't happen all the time. And what stops it happening is a tort, which is sort of part of civil law, and it's called passing off. And you can protect against a voice clone or all sorts of other things with it. There's 3 ways that you can say, okay, passing off has occurred. That the subject, it saves Stephen Fry for the sake of argument here, must have goodwill. So you think, oh, Stephen Fry's the sort of guy they would ask to do an advert. Yeah. Therefore, and that's because people like him and they like the voice and whatever. So if you've faked Stephen Fry's voice, you've gone against that. There has to be a misrepresentation, i.e. people think it is Stephen Fry. Yeah. There are people, as I think you and I have talked about before, who sound quite like the celebrities, but not entirely. Yeah. And on a sort of, if you're doing 2 things at once, you might think it is. But you must be very careful not to make it sound like it can't be a Stephen Fry impersonator, or Rob Brydon could just do all the adverts.
Yes.
And there have to be damages arising from that misuse. So obviously, you've lost the fee for the advert or whatever it is. But there was one Eddie Irvine. They said he was listening to Talk Sport.
The Formula One driver.
Yeah. But right back in 2003, and he was like, this is a false advert. I wasn't listening to Talk Sport or whatever it was. So that was passing off. More recently, there was some T-shirts in Topshop, which is no longer with us, Rihanna T-shirts, and it sort of looked like tour merchandise, but it wasn't. And she sued, saying, this is passing off. You've basically used my likeness to make money, and she won on that. So you can do it, and you can't do impressions, and you can't make it look like someone has endorsed something when they haven't.
Well, that's the interesting. Your third bit about passing off, whether it does do damage to the celebrity. By the very nature of an advert, you sound like you're endorsing something.
Yeah.
And if you haven't chosen to endorse that thing, then you're going to win in caught every single time because that's super easy to prove. So yeah, I often think that. I often think it would be cheaper just to, it must be easy to impersonate people, but that's interesting. But you're not allowed to do it.
And AI can do it increasingly brilliantly, as we've seen. You can give a tiny bit of.
But you would have exactly the same issue, which is that whether it's a real person or AI, the celebrity could just go to court and say, this is not me, I didn't endorse this, people think it's me, and it's not something that I would do, and they would win that case.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is with AI now, where it will be possible to do it, you may find that many celebrities are allowing, sort of saying, you can use an AI of my voice. I can't be bothered going into Soho and standing in a booth and advertising whatever this product is. Just use my AI.
Yeah.
And you may find that they sort of contract it all out to a computer.
One day we'll have to talk about voiceovers for adverts, because it's a very, very, very funny industry.
Yeah, that's a good one. We will talk about that. Straight into the Liz Truss bit, Richard. Popular vein on this show. Okay, Henrik Dahlberg.
Friend of the show. The Liz Truss, but not Henrik. Although Henrik is as well.
Yeah, Henrik Dahlberg, you are now a friend of the show. Are books sent out for review and similar included in the sales numbers? If so, would that mean Liz Truss sold close to 0 copies of her books?
Oh, that's a nice thought, Henrik. No, so books sent out for review, what you do with a book, you get your proof copies kind of a long time in advance, like a year in advance. Sometimes you send them out. None of those count. It has to, Nielsen have to sell your book for you. And Nielsen essentially, every single big high street retailer is with Nielsen, the Waterstones, all the supermarkets. Your local independent bookseller will have a Nielsen thing. If you ever do a book festival, the one thing they always say is, and we do have a Nielsen-supported store at the book festivals, just because no one ever wants to sell a book and it not to be in the charts is the thing. So yeah, they all have to be with Nielsen. Yeah, so Liz Truss last week I think was number 263 in the charts. So it's she didn't manage to keep up the 70th place in the first week, and the Magical Kingdom sticker book continues to soar, but
rightly, it is an excellent product,
so.
Not sponsored.
But should we promise that's the last time we mention the Liz Truss book?
Yeah, unless there's some sort of sudden revival in sales, which if it happens, we're going to do a whole episode on it.
Yeah, because something very weird
something
will have happened.
Mega will have happened,
or unless they make a movie of it with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
Playing the same character again.
I have a question for you from Chris Harmon. Chris says, this is so good. I've always wondered why it's so difficult to weave sports activity into drama or films. It always looks so inauthentic and contrived. That is so true.
Yes.
Is it because of cost, sports knowledge on set, or is it just not possible to replicate or film the appropriate skills on display?
There's a school of thought that sort of all speciality scenes like music, video gaming, I'm told guns in movies, if you know anything about it, they're doing it all wrong and it looks terrible and blah, blah, blah. And actually, in many ways, most of us are not even generalists. So when we see this thing, of course we think the guns are authentic. Of course we think whatever. But if you know anything about it...
Yeah, if you ever see your job on television, if you're a nurse or if you work in insurance or if you work in shipping and you see someone do that job, you go, hold on, that's completely not like my job. And then you do have to go, are they lying about all jobs on television?
Yeah, not really. And actually, there's something, everyone gets pretty about their own little job. And actually, generalism is great and it's fine. Can I mention a past favourite show where the action looked really good, which was, do you remember Sky's Dream Team? Sky used to have this soap opera kind of drama set on a fictional football club called Harchester United, who played in purple. Yeah. And because they were able to use real footage and they just sort of like quite badly VFX the purple onto everything, that their football always looked like Premier League football because it was. Because it was on Sky, wasn't it? So they had the rights. Oh yeah, they had everything. So that was one of the reasons that show got off the ground. Also, I love you, Fletch. And do you know what Fletch does now?
Do you know what? I didn't know what he did then, and I do not know what he does now.
Okay, well, he was Richard? He was the striker of Harchester United.
I'm so sorry.
He's now, I believe, a doorman at Annabelle's.
No way.
Formerly the sort of doyen of kind of Maver private members clubs, and now this kind of palace of horrific bling owned by that dreadful Caring, I think.
That's like Zamo from Grange Hill, who always used to work at the locksmiths on St Anne's Court.
Yes.
Very similar, isn't it?
Slightly different vibe, the locksmiths to the Temple of Bling. Yes, but anyway. But yes, so I think...
The Temple of Bling, by the way, another good name for this episode.
Yeah. You just put it... All of our episodes call it that, please. But yeah, sport is incredibly hard to show. You've got actors and they can't do it. And even if they're just doing the cutaway shots and you're trying to it's very hard to make it look authentic. You often hear sport people saying, when you're watching actual live sport, oh, you couldn't write this. And you think all the time, well, people write most extraordinary, amazing fantasy. So you could, but in lots of ways, you couldn't write it because you certainly couldn't act it. And I do think that there's just something about it. I was thinking of writing something that I still really want to write that does have, that is sport adjacent.
Okay.
But I did think the only way to do this is to not, literally, you will never see the actual sport. You may see reaction shots to the people. And I was kind of lucky because it wasn't really about the people who play, the athletes in particular. But I think you should only ever see the reaction shots because it is so instantly undermining when you think, yeah, what am I actually watching? It is like the dog and duck or whatever it is, depending on the sport.
Well, it's if you imagine in a script, someone says, it's a ball is crossed from the left wing, the guy heads it and the goalie just misses it. That's almost impossible to do. Otherwise all football matches would be 100 all.
Yeah.
If you could just do what you wanted all the time. So even if you had the best players in the world, you literally wouldn't be able to do it. I think most of those shows do have, consultants who know how a football match goes, and they do have professionals. Escape to Victory. Do you know what? He actually, Chris actually says, under no circumstances mention Escape to Victory because this is sacrosanct, and he's absolutely right. So the football in that is terrible, but there's a lot of real footballers.
Yeah, and there's an exemption.
John Walker's in there, Bobby Moore is in there, Hele's in there. There's a lot of the Ipswich team of the early 80s is in there.
And that great generalist Sylvester Stallone, who can do really any of the sports.
Listen, if he wanted to be a professional footballer,
I think he could.
He could have been one. But yeah, so it's very, very, very hard to choreograph. If you think about a game of football, it's very hard to choreograph. But even...
It's hard for the players, by the way. If you said to actual football players, can you do this exact thing? They would suddenly go, you're all fingers and thumbs. You just can't. Yeah, no, I can't.
We should try and get Gary and Micah and Alan to... We should give it, here's a specific thing we need you to do. Try and do this. And those 3 professional footballers, I bet they couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And
my absolute bet noir is if ever, and it happens, on lots of things, if ever someone's playing pool or snooker on a TV program, because when you're filming something, of course, you need continuity. So you might do 8 different takes. And so when you've got pool balls, you need them to stay exactly where they are. You need the same shots to be played every time. So if you ever see a game of pool, it's always like there's 4 balls on the table. They're all literally over the pockets. So it's completely impossible to miss. So because they've had to film this 8 times, so it has to be like the order has to be absolutely.
And they probably had to do it 800 times to get even the 8.
Yeah, exactly that. And it never looks like a real game of pool, or like someone has to pop the black, otherwise they're going to be killed by a gangster. And suddenly it sort of goes around 15 angles. You think, I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah.
That shot you played. While I'm talking, I tell you a sport that you absolutely could fake on television really, really easily. Is darts.
I knew you were going to say
because
that.
It has the split screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got your actor, you've got Danny Dyer on this bit of the split screen throwing. You just need to look like you know how to throw a dart, which is you can train an actor to look like you can throw a dart.
Oh, you can train one to do it for you for biscuits and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other screen, you just got like a professional player throw whatever score you need at 171. Actually you can't do 171. If you want 170, if you want 142. You just have someone throwing until you get it.
Please, can you do a darts movie, Richard? I would love to watch a darts movie.
I would love to watch a darts movie as well.
Some friends of mine from university always wanted to write one about table football that they were going to call Rods of Steel, which is a really, you have to play on bad sticky tables and stuff.
Yeah.
You're working your way up, it gets big. I mean, there is speaking of actually any sport Sylvester Stallone can do. Have you ever seen Over the Top?
Yes, the arm wrestling one.
Sylvester Stallone is in an arm wrestling movie.
See, that you can do.
Yeah,
table football you could do because there's enough going. Anyone can sort of. You just keep playing it and then just film it. But anything, it's like a ballet football. Really, it's like an improvised ballet. Well,
that's what Scorsese does in like Raging Bull, where the opening titles, which are absolutely beautiful for Raging Bull, it is made to look completely balletic, and you're already put in a different sort of frame of mind when you're watching it. So he does that very cleverly.
And there are ways and means in boxing movies of making that look good because people are so used to sparring and with camera angles and stuff like that, and with sweat pouring off you. But there's something unique about football and cricket and all that you
Team
just
sports
think,
are a nightmare.
oh my God, just if you see anything, just so especially American shows when they have soccer, they'll have like the daughter plays for like the soccer team of her school, and you see this shot all the time, just of legs and her just dribbling past 4 different people, all of whom trying to get a tackle in, but they can't quite do it, and then sort of getting in front of the goalie and then just knock it into the corner. The goalie dives the other way, and you think, yeah, no wonder Americans took a long time to get to like football if that's what they think it is.
Yeah.
It's but it's honestly
golf. Now that's one you can do, and that's why there are so many golf movies.
But because whenever I watch golf and anything, I always look at people's swings, and sometimes they'll go, "Oh, you're supposed to be a great golfer." I don't think so.
You're going to ruin Tin Cup.
But it's very hard to make it look like you've got a good golf swing. But things where you're supposed to have a good golf swing.
I think you can get away with golf, and that's why there are movies. Also, because most people watching it, the kind of audience, why are we making a golf movie with Adam Sandler? It's like for dads who also don't have a great golf swing. So they're kind of okay with it. And they're never playing, I guess Tin Cup is a rarity because he is actually doing quite well in that, even though he's an outsider.
I'm terrifically excited about Happy Gilmore 2, which supposedly is coming out. I love Happy Gilmore.
Well,
Caddyshack.
Highest paid movie star in the world.
There's loads of good golf movies.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
Sorry, what's your question? Are there loads of good golf movies, Chris? It wasn't. No, it was.
Because we went on a magical mystery tour. Okay.
Yeah, but essentially they absolutely try their hardest, and they will all have kind of consultants who can tell them how to play football. But best ever sporting movie?
Oh, it's hard. Probably for me, Raging Bull. Probably, but there are so many good ones. But they've normally got round that issue that we talked about.
Yeah, Moneyball.
Yes, well,
I love Moneyball.
Yeah, that's about maths.
Hold on a minute. But do you say maths isn't a sport?
Yeah, I mean it's a contact sport the way you do it. Yeah.
Having said Paul has always badly done The Hustler.
Yeah, Paul Newman has done a lot of good sports movies.
Best sports documentary, Next Goal Wins, the one about American Samoa.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Kingpin. That's about bowling, but that's a good movie. Anyway, listen, reply to the YouTube thing with your favourite sports movie, because we would have forgotten loads.
And from that, I'm going to ask you a question about casting that Claire Mahoney asks, and I would also love to know this. With the casting of Helen Mirren in The Thursday Murder Club, the movie based on Richard's brilliant series of books, in fact, the first one, I wanted to know whether when writing the character of Elizabeth, you had Helen in mind for the film, and whether there were other actors you had in mind for other members of the cast.
Oh, that's funny. Well, listen, I'll talk more generally about what writers think. For me, definitely not, because when you're writing, you're not thinking this will be a film
that Helen Mirren will be in.
Yeah, that Helen Mirren will be in. You're literally thinking, how do I get to the end of writing this?
But were you thinking of someone? Some people say write with an actor in mind if you're writing things, because it so helps to visualize the kind of cohered person.
I don't, because I don't have a very visual imagination, so I wouldn't do it. I interviewed Stephen King, and he said he can't picture people unless suddenly they look in a mirror or something. So he's looking through the character's eyes all the time, and I'm feeling the character's vibes rather than looking at them. Listen, she's absolutely perfect for it. But lots of writers do, and lots of writers even you'll read books when they'll bring a character on, and instead of sort of long description of what they look like, they'll say who looked a lot like the actor Kiefer Sutherland, and everyone's like, oh, okay, I can see exactly who that is now. When you're pitching shows, and we make decks these days. When you're pitching a film, or if you're pitching a format, you would always put dream actors on
and
those
it seems
decks.
so arrogant when you're doing it. Yeah. I've done this for a couple of things, and they're asking you, and who do you see as this? And they're naming some of the biggest actors in the world, and you're thinking, I just don't think they're going to be in this. But they want you to say that, it's a so and so type.
Yeah, you would. If you're essentially pitching a thing, you will send a deck off, and that deck will have a picture of Ryan Gosling on it. Yeah, and it'll have Viola Davis on it, and that's not who you're going to get. But everyone's like, oh my god, yeah, that would be amazing. And if you pitch a TV show, it's always we've got Michael McIntyre and Dawn French as our hosts on the front of this format that we want you to buy. Yeah. And there's not, in a million years, you're not going to get that, but it helps everyone
to sort of... The Thursday Murder Club story is within a million years, because all the people are like, oh my God, I think it is amazing, actually. And I do think a lot of readers have had those people in their minds when, I wonder if subconsciously they were, but funny enough, I actually always, for Elizabeth, when I was reading it, thought of Fiona Shaw, who obviously does the audio, but brilliantly. So I always thought of her, and that's exactly as I sort of pictured her, but because it works so well, of course I can see Helen Mirren as it. Yeah,
exactly. And someone like Ron, who is a sort of slightly overweight West Ham supporter.
I thought of him as Bob Crow. the former union official
listen,
who I always loved to hear anything. Every time he talked, he was just so sort of mesmerising.
And like Bob Crow, the person you get to play Bob Crow in a film is Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
No, but
so obvious.
But that's the brilliant thing about Hollywood casting is because, of course, if you were casting Elizabeth, you'd cast Helen Mirren. I mean, she's literally perfect. But the reason casting directors are so great is they'll look at Ron and go, do you know what? Why don't we ask Pierce Brosnan? Because he's a great comic actor, Pierce Brosnan, and he knows what the character looks like, and he knows what the character's vibe is, and so that's when casting directors really earn their corn, because no writer in a million years writing Ron would be thinking, and I tell you who I see when I think of Ron, I see Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
the
even
Silver
directors
Fox.
won't think like that. The casting agent is just it's an extraordinary role, and I keep saying we're going to do an interview, but we should get a really good one on to talk about that, because it is genuinely
Casting
fascinating.
directors.
A lot of directors will say to you, "Oh, it's the most fun that it ever is in the process," when you're just talking about all the different people who could be this one role. And a lot of directors will think, "And now I've actually got to direct this movie," or whatever it is. But they love the casting process.
But definitely, if you're writing a novel, I think it's not helpful for me, but a lot of writers, it's incredibly helpful to think who would be this person in a movie. It just gives you a sort of extra vibe, and it helps you kind of see how they move and how they might talk, and rhythms of speech and things like that. So I do think for lots of people it's super, super useful. If they were making a goal hanger the movie, the rest is politics, the rest is history, all of that. I mean, that's a casting job.
Oh, I'd love to cast that. I'd have to think about it. But
Cumberbatch as Rory Stewart.
Absolutely.
Redmayne
as Alistair Campbell. Just give it to all the.
That's a good idea.
Boys.
Age him up a little bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. Campbell, I mean, he's a very young man. You and me, I'd be Zammo from Grange Hill.
Yes, and I would be Fletch from
Dream Team.
Dream Team. Or either that or Gillian Anderson, of course. Who?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Although I do notice that once
be...
you've played Thatcher, you kind of get Thatcheritis for the next two roles afterwards. So you're sort of slightly always playing Margaret Thatcher in all the next.
So you
roles.
could be Gillian Anderson's route out of Margaret Thatcher.
Yes, I'd like to give her an exit strategy, because she was strangely Emily Maitlis seemed a little bit like Margaret Thatcher in the Newsnight Prince Andrew's story that was turned into a Netflix drama.
So if you're Gillian Anderson, and in the spirit that Pierce Brosnan can play Ron, then maybe I could be David Duchovny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I would want that.
Anderson and Duchovny in The Rest is
Entertainment.
Entertainment.
They're rebooting it, and I think they might have small roles. Mulder and Scully, the original Mulder and Scully, they're rebooting
X-Files.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, that feels like a. I mean,
I don't know a gimme.
I don't know what would have to happen to the podcast for someone to dramatise it. I don't like to think about it.
It's
there would have to be a
incredibly
siege.
dynamic. It's very, very. People talk to you about Aaron Sorkin, all the dialogue, but this is like. I mean, it's essentially an action movie. If they do the podcast, it's an action movie.
What about something where it's the two of us playing pool?
Yeah.
Hold on. That's a hit, isn't it?
Would even I be able to pot some of those? Yeah, maybe.
Ideally, I'd like Statham to play me. But of course I would.
I'd love that.
I think that might be us done.
I think it is. But we would very much like you to join us next week. So as is now becoming our traditional sign-off, I think we should say...
See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
And also, if you're Jason Statham's agent, get in touch.